Shalom WJC family. It's time for our weekly Torah talk. This week we are reading Parshat VaYakhel Pekudei, or the two Parshiot, I should say, VaYakhel and Pekudei. This brings us to a close of the book of Exodus, the book of Shemot. These are the final two Torah portions, and they consist of Moses gathering the people together, collecting the donations for the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert, putting together the pieces, crafting those pieces, putting together those pieces. And ultimately, when we come to the end of the Torah portion, there's a very peculiar thing, right? So remember, for 5 parshas, more or less, so a huge amount of ink in the Torah is spent on the instructions and then the actual crafting of the tabernacle. So important, so climactic is this idea that we'll build a sanctuary and God will be able to dwell right there among the people, or will be obviously dwelling there among the people. They'll have this tabernacle, this tent of meeting to gather around, all this effort so that God and the people can meet together. And here's how the parsha ends. It says, when Moses finished the work, the cloud covered the tent of meeting. The presence of the Lord filled the Mishkan, the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled upon it in the presence of the Lord, and the presence of the Lord filled the Mishkan. So hopefully you caught the obvious question there. How could it be that they spent all this time building this tent of meeting, and when they finish it, God's cloud of glory fills the tent and Moses can't enter? It seems highly anticlimactic, actually. Not only that, but we read in other places that Moses goes inside the tent. And so the rabbis catch the contradiction right away. And so they're trying to tease it out, and they say, well, Moses mostly couldn't get into the tent, but there were special occasions that he could. Now, the whole point of the tent is relationship. It's to share one's inner self. And so one metaphor that one of my rabbis, Brad Artson, has used for this cloud is actually the cloud is one's inner self, the turmoil one might feel. And that when we're talking to someone, we can't actually sense that cloud, that is something one has only to him or herself. We might say that the cloud is one's connection to the world and how difficult and complicated that can be. It's all that makes someone complicated and difficult to understand. And if that's true for people, how much more so then would that be for God? Right? God's not simpler than people. God's infinitely more complex and complicated. So the cloud seems to be impenetrable. When the cloud fills the tent, Moses can't go in. So how is it that Moses does sometimes go in? One Torah commentator, building on a passage in the Talmud, says that so the Talmud says that God took hold of Moses and brought him into the cloud, that only when God sort of invited Moses in or brought him in, then he could come into the cloud. The Bechor Shor, one of our commentators quoting or building on that comment in the Talmud, says that God calls to Moses, and the Ramban says God would call Moses, and only then could he enter the midst of the tent. Right, so all these commentators, what's the answer to the complexity, to the inability to penetrate the tent? The answer seems to be invitation. It seems to be opening oneself up so that the cloud can be penetrated. And that's what God ultimately does to allow the Jewish people to be in relationship, in community with God. It's such a powerful idea, and I think it applies today as much as ever. We live in this crazy world full of turmoil, the fog of war, the cloud of anti-Semitism and attacks, the cruelty that we see all around us, and violence, and it's impossible to understand everything that's going on because of the difficulties in getting real stories and the complexity of the media landscape today. It all results in a fog, in a cloud. And how do we navigate that cloud? How do we ultimately enter into healthy, purposeful, visionary relationships? Well, it's just like God models for us in this parsha, that ultimately we have to be willing to open up our cloud, share that inner turmoil, admit that we are in a terrible place and that we don't have all the answers, or a difficult place, maybe not terrible, but a difficult place, and we don't have all the answers. When we're able to sort of part that fog, part that cloud, it also parts the cloud in the world around us and allows us to share real, true relationship. That might not fix all our problems. In fact, obviously it hasn't up until now, but it does allow us to share our vulnerability, to share our fears and our anxiety. And when we share it, we can hold it up together and ultimately face the world together, hopefully clearing away some of that fog, but certainly appreciating each other, our shared perspectives, our shared personalities, and the opportunity to really be together in loving and respectful relationship. Sometimes relationships feel like a contradiction. It seems impossible to really get to know someone, or when we think we really know someone, suddenly something happens and we don't. That's not a terrible thing. The challenges of relationships is what makes them so powerful. They are complicated, just like each of us is complicated, exponentially more when we try and merge our clouds or put our clouds together. But when we're able to open ourselves up, the way that God opens God's self up to Moses and the Jewish people by appearing on Mount Sinai, by giving instructions for the Mishkan, by giving us the Torah and Halakha and a way to live our lives that sort of brings God into our lives, or allows us to enter into God's holiness and bring more of that holiness into the world. When we do all of that, it does in fact feel, or can, and hopefully feels, like the cloud is parting and the brightness is coming in. It's not easy. It's hard to open ourselves up. It's hard to invite somebody into our cloud, to invite somebody into our fog. And yet, it is such a powerful way to bring holiness into the world, such a powerful way to find support for ourselves and to help support others, such a powerful way to build a structure to hold up all of that which is confusing and hopefully show us the path towards something better that we can bring into this world, the tikkun that we are all looking for so desperately. May we all have the strength and courage and wisdom and patience to open ourselves up, risking the disappointment and the hurt. And may we all, in doing so, instead find that truth and that honesty and that connection that we all so desperately need and want and desire to help us navigate this cloud of a world, this foggy world we live in true community, in true mutual support and kindness and generosity. We feel the warmth of not only being lifted up, but being able to lift up others and guide each other through this moment. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.